First up, I'm going to mention is that the campaign pictures for this palette, and I'm going to pop them on the side here so you'll be able to see, they are very, very misleading. So this palette does look very beautiful in person, however, it's not as deep and it is as dark as portrayed in these images, and unfortunately, that is a shame. I don't know why the brand decided to do that, especially when you're purchasing things online. You really want to have true to color images and true to color swatches. Having such high contrast in pictures really doesn't help, because as you can see from this palette, it does not look like these images here. So if you're thinking of buying this, it's not as deep, it's not as dark as the pictures shown. Now, what I love about this palette is, first of all, this mirror is beautiful. I feel like I can see my entire eye, my hair, you know, I can't see my whole face, but I can get a very good view of both my eyes at the same time. So if I'm trying to make sure that things look even, I can do that very, very easily. So I love the mirror. I think the mirror is very, very good quality. The packaging is also beautiful with this rose gold finish. It does get a lot of fingerprints here. That's okay. Now, talking about the eyeshadows, the matte eyeshadows are fantastic. They are really, really stunning. I love the mattes in this formula. They apply quite softly to the eye. I mean, you can obviously build them up, and when you shear them out, when you blend them out, they can almost blend out to nothing, which can be a pro and con, I suppose, depending on what type of person you are. It may be a con for some, it may be a pro for others. I don't see a problem with that. I think beginners will really enjoy this matte formula because, again, it blends out into nothing. So the likelihood that you'll have trouble blending them out is pretty low. So I do like the matte formulas. I think they are beautiful. The cream eyeshadows, I also really enjoy the formula of these cream eyeshadows. They're stunning. You can easily blend them out. They apply nice and creamy, and they slightly set down, so they're actually not too emollient. They're slightly emollient, but not too emollient, and I really, really enjoy this cream eyeshadow formula. I think it's fabulous. The only thing I would say is that I love this shade. I feel like this shade is very, very beautiful. This shade right here is more like a contour shade. It has quite strong, cool undertones, although it would be great if you the type of person who likes to contour your eye. I'm not that person. I don't even think I have the skills to use this shade probably as a contour. Maybe something for me to experiment with later on. If you're into that, you might really like this shade. I just wish this shade was slightly lighter or darker, or maybe a slightly different shade and not as cool tone would have been better, but that's okay. I've still liked using it, but I definitely prefer this shade over this one. So the cream eyeshadows are fabulous. I have no issues with these. In terms of longevity, now the matte eyeshadows, unfortunately, even on an eye where I've added concealer, powdered my eye, and then gone in with just the mattes, they're not very long wearing. My oils will come through and these matte eyeshadows will just crease. So that's one of the downsides with this palette, is that although the mattes are really, really beautiful, in terms of longevity, even on top of concealer, they're not the best. So what I highly recommend with this is that if you're going to pick up this palette or you have this palette, use an eye primer, because with an eye primer, these mattes last all day on me. The oils don't break through, and you know, my eyelids look perfectly crease free. The eye primer that I used with these was the NARS eye primer, and this works perfectly with these mattes. So that's, in my opinion, a bit of a con, because I have a lot of other palettes where the mattes last all day on me, especially if I pop them on top of concealed eyelids. So in terms of the mattes, that's the really only downside. I also really love the color selection with the mattes. I think the color selection is really spot on. Even these two light shades, so this isn't a matte, this has some shimmer in it. This one is a matte right here. I love this shade as just all over the eye to kind of blank out your eye, and then just go in with one of these matte shades just to smoke out the outer V, and you have a beautiful, beautiful look that's perfect for work. And this shade is just great for my skin tone. It doesn't look too pale or too muddy or anything like that. I really, really love this shade, and these three shades are perfection as well. Great for my skin tone. This shade, surprisingly, is really beautiful. Let me actually pop this shade on so I can show you. I'm just going to take a pointy brush. I have no idea where this brush is from, so sorry, I can't tell you that. And then I'm just going to go take in a little bit of this. So if you guys are used to watching my videos, you know that I am not an inner corner highlight person. I don't know why, it's just something I don't really like to do. I honestly never got into the whole inner corner highlight. I kind of like my eye looks without the inner corner highlight. However, what I can say is that this shade is really, really beautiful, and I really love it as an inner corner highlight. Like, I feel like this shade has changed me to use an inner corner highlight because I really love how it looks. It's not too intense and shimmery or too metallic or too shiny. It's a really nice soft shade. It's almost like a matte shade with just a little bit of shimmer. It's beautiful. I really, really enjoy this, which was a surprise for me. I normally don't like light shades, but this was really stunning. Beautiful, beautiful. And then we get here. Now the shimmer, sadly, is what lets this palette down. They are a bit of a hit and miss. So for example, this shimmer, this and this shimmer right here, they're really beautiful shimmers. They work really well. It's almost like a matte shade with a little bit of sparkle, a little bit of shimmer going on. It looks nice on the eye. I feel like this is a type of shimmer that I can even wear to work and I have no issues with it. So I really like that. This shimmer also performs really, really well. Now, the problems I have are with these topper shades, which is 1, 2, and 3. So this one is actually a really beautiful eyeshadow. It looks really stunning on the eye. Unfortunately, it's slightly flaky. So this is what I call like a semi-flaky formula. It's not very flaky or too flaky. It's not as flaky as, say, the Huda Beauty. Sometimes Huda Beauty shimmer shades can be very flaky. It's not to that level. I wish this wasn't flaky. I wish this was more of a normal sort of shimmer formula, but it is slightly chunky. Although I'm not a huge fan of this texture, I can work with it, I can use it, and I do like the looks that I create with it. Then we come up to kind of these two topper shades. Now these two are very different from this one. This one is a lot more pigmented with a lot more shimmer. These are true topper shades. They have like a scattered glitter finish, so you're not going to get an intense payoff with these. You are going to get some of that scattered sparkle finish with these two formulas. Now they're also very similar to each other. I don't see the point of having both of these, but it is what it is. I prefer this shade over this one, which is quite surprising because this is kind of the warmer one. This is the one that has that peach tone. I really thought I would love this one, but I think the quality, which is quite interesting, the quality is actually better in this one. It applies really well with your finger. I have no issues with it, whereas this shade is it's a little bit difficult to work with. So the shimmer shades for me are a little bit of a hit and miss. Also, 1, 2, 3, these 3 shimmer shades have gone hard pan on me very, very quickly. I've only been using this palette for 2 weeks, right? Just 2 weeks. And while I've been dipping into these shades and consequently then topping them off with these shimmer shades, the shimmer shades have definitely gone hard pan very quickly, so it's a bit annoying for me, and I'm gonna have to fix these because they've gotten a bit too hard pan for me at the moment. Then these two shades here are quite similar. I feel like you didn't need both. Now, just going back to the cream, I did try the creams on their own. They definitely crease. They also crease when you pop them on top of an eye primer. I will say that when I actually wore this shade to work, very sheer layers all over my eye, this did crease on me very quickly, and all I had to do was kind of just, when I was topping up my lipstick, I just went and just tapped on my eyelid a little bit, and then these just smoothed out and there was no issues there. So overall, I think this is a good palette. I think there's some very solid pros, and then there are also some cons that I think you do need to consider in terms of purchasing this palette. Another con with this palette is really lack of diversity. This is, after all, a very monochromatic brown eyeshadow palette. It's got shades of brown. Apart from that silver at the end, more or less it's shades of brown. I personally do use browns a lot for every day. I use them to work every day. So a palette like this for me is useful. This is not a waste in my collection because I know I use shades like this all the time. But I do wish the shimmer shades had been a bit different, just to give more diversity to this palette. I think if you're someone who loves different looks from one palette, you're probably not going to enjoy this, because you're not going to get very different looks. Every look that you do is more or less going to look very similar to each other. So, you know, if diversity of shades is your thing, if you like palettes that you can do lots of different looks with it, this is not for you, because you're not going to get that. But if you want a monochromatic palette, you want a palette with shades that you're going to use every day, I think this is a really good palette. Overall, I think this is a good palette, and what makes this good is actually the mattes, the creams. That's what makes this palette good. If the mattes weren't as good, I would have said don't even bother with it, but because the mattes are good and the cream eyeshadows I've enjoyed, and yes, the shimmers are not the best, but they're still workable. You can still use them, you can still create pretty looks with them. Now I do want to quickly compare this palette against the Anastasia Beverly Hills soft glam palette. So this is what the soft glam palette looks like, which I feel like a lot of us probably have. And then just in comparison, we've got the Patrick Ta. So you can see, just looking at the color stories, they're quite similar. Honestly speaking, I feel like you get a lot of bang with your buck with the soft glam palette. With soft glam, you can do so many looks that will actually look different. You don't necessarily get that with the Patrick Ta. Even with the inclusion of the creams, you don't really get that many different looks that you can actually get from the soft glam. Also, the quality of the soft glam is fantastic. The shimmer shades are good, the matte shades are good. So if I had to pick out of these two, I'm going to pick the soft glam. Now, a quick comparison with the bronze palette. So this is the Natasha Denona bronze palette, and then I'm going to put this side by side with the Patrick Ta. You can kind of see that both these palettes lean on the monochromatic side. So out of these two, what I will say is, again, you get slightly more different looks with the bronze palette. Now, although the bronze palette has shades that are very similar to each other, I mean, I have created lots of different looks with this palette alone that I can't necessarily create the same level of diversity with the Patrick Ta. So for those of you who already have the bronze palette and you like the bronze palette, I don't think you really need the Patrick Ta, because you can get very similar looks, diversity of looks. There's also better shimmer shades in the bronze palette. And honestly, if I had to pick between the two, I would pick the bronze over the Patrick Ta. I'm going to take the lighter of the cream eyeshadows, which is this top one right here, and I'm just going to apply that to the mobile lid. That's what that looks like. I'm going to pick up a little bit more product and just focus that on the lid. I'm just going to focus blending this cream into the crease. You can see that. Next, I'm going to take this shade right here, and I'm just going to apply this shade over the lid. Going back in for a little bit more. Just going to blend some of this shimmer into the crease area, just so it looks a little bit softer. Then I'm going to take this shade right here and just going to take that on my ring finger as well. This is also a topper shade, and I'm just going to focus this in the middle. This is the final eye. Very clean, very simple. I really like how this look turned out. For this eye, I'm just going to apply some concealer to my lid because I want to cancel out my natural darker lids. So I'm going to go into this lightest shade where it's not too light, and it really works for my skin tone. So I'm just going to go ahead and just focus this shade pretty much all over the eye. And you can see that this shade is very close to my skin tone. I really like that because that means it's very easy for me to use. Now then, I'm going to go into this shade right here and focus that in the crease just to warm up my crease area just a little bit. So I'm being very light-handed with this. I don't want a lot of color. I just want a little bit of depth in my crease. And I'm gonna go into this shade right here. Gonna go a little bit more. And I'm just going to gently apply that in the outer V. Just going to blend this out. Now I'm getting a little bit of patchiness right here. That is not because of this matte formula. It's only because I didn't take my concealer right up to my brow bone. I kind of ended it here, which is why you're getting that little bit of patchiness. Totally my fault. It's in the application. It is not because of this formula. And I'm going to go back in the same shade and just going to deepen up. And then going to go back in and just going to blend this out. You can absolutely leave this look like this. I think it looks really nice with just maybe some eye pencil and you are good to go. So I'm actually gonna go in with this shade right here and going to apply that to my lid. Definitely getting fallout with this look, so I know I'm going to have to wipe my under eye area before I apply concealer. I've now applied concealer under my eyes and I'm going to go back into this red shade and just going to run this through the lower lash line. And this is the second look. I do actually want to try this shade right here, right on top of this, and just to see how that looks. And so I'm just going to pop a little bit of that topper shade right in the middle. I'm going to go back in, pick up some more. I think that looks quite nice. Just a little bit more dimension, I think. Just having that, just a light shade right in the middle. I actually really prefer this look now with the topper shade than before. Next up, the cream pencil. I am gonna go and run this through. So that's how the cream liner looks on me. I like the shade. I think the shade is really good because it doesn't look too bright. It doesn't look stark white. It's got a nice cream shade that actually works for my skin tone. So I do like the shade. It's just, this doesn't stay in my waterline for like an hour. That's it. And then it's really gone. So the downside with this look is that I'm not really gonna use something that is not gonna last on me. For the third look, I'm gonna go into this deeper cream right here. Just all over the lid. You can see this cream is so easy to apply and it's already kind of blending itself out. You don't have to do a lot of work trying to blend this formula. Just going to edge. Go into this shade right here, and all I'm going to do is pick up a little bit just so I can kind of smooth out the crease area. And I'm just adding it in the crease area. Then I'm going to go into this shade and I'm going to apply it directly on top of the lid. As you can see, it's a little bit flaky. You can kind of see that. Go back in. Shade can be a little bit difficult to work with. I think you can tell just with my application. It does overall look really nice, but it's definitely a textured shade. It's a bit flaky and it's a bit difficult to work with. I do like this shade. I think it looks really, really nice, but you kind of have to get the hang of applying it onto your eye. So now what I'm going to do, this shade and this shade together. So these are the two shades. I'm going to dip my finger into it together. So a little bit in here, a little bit in here, mix up the two. And now I'm going to apply that on this side. And I'm going to use a slightly different technique. On this side, I was using swiping motions like this. On this side, I'm going to just use a bit of more of a tapping motions. And then you'll see how different this would look. So going back in with the two shades. And I'm just going to more or less pat it all over the eye. And you do get a very different look here. It's a lot lighter in tone, especially with mixing the two shades together. Also, I didn't use swiping motions, I just used patting motions. And in terms of texture, these two sides look different as well. For this look, I have primed my lids with NARS primer. And now I'm gonna go in with this shade right here into the crease. Now I'm gonna pack on this dark shade right here, and I'm gonna pop this on all over my eye. And I'm just going to apply this shade all over the eyelid. With this look, don't worry about being very precise or, you know, blending this out really, really well. It doesn't really matter because we're gonna go right now with this cream shade right here, this dark cream shade. We're gonna go with that all over the lid. And this is just to get this look to be as intense and as dark as possible. And I'm gonna pop that right on top. Grab some more. And then taking my MAC 217, I'm just gonna buff the edges out. And the cream is just actually going to blend everything together really nicely. And it's going to all look smooth. This is the final look. All I've done is smudged a little bit of a black eye pencil right on the lash line there. Added, of course, the same brown eyeshadow, not the cream, just the powder under my eyes. I wasn't sure how the cream will act with my concealer and I didn't want that to go messy, so I didn't try that. So I can't tell you whether the creams under the eye is a good idea or not. That's something I'm gonna have to try out. And this is it. This is my favorite look from this palette. It combines both the matte and the beautiful cream eyeshadow. If you have this palette, I would love to hear from you. What do you think? Hit that like button if you found this video helpful. And I will see you guys in my next video. See ya!